Thank you, Roger.
How many people took your test?
We have
Well, I had
Barbara Hernandez, we have Monica Silva, and we have Susan Sterrett.
12 here in this room, and we had another 12 downstairs. As it originally was scheduled for the auditorium.
Blair Peters is on due for,
Perfect.
from IT.
Do the exam if they
He's on a
had
board
some-
member.
Like a room where people could spread out and.
No, this is a good room. for that.
Yeah, it worked well. We had a bunch of people taking the intro to farm test, and that's what took the longest.
The what?
The intro to farm assessment.
Oh, boy.
Oddly enough, a lot of the people taking that exam were from Cook County.
Oh, I wonder why.
I don't, well, because when the department issues it, and it's free. If private individuals do it, it costs money. And, so they'll send you to farm, even though by law, Cook County does not assess farm. Any farm in Cook County has to be assessed in.
There's still farm acres over there.
Oh, absolutely. That's where.
How are you? Good morning.
I did some farm evaluation down at the south end on Route 30. In the area where they have another one of those radar installations. I went to one just west of Geneva here, with
Okay.
specific, they can't develop around that area because of the height of the roof. So, I did the evaluation on federal aviation.
It's working, but
You know, Roar's still around.
several months ago.
Yeah,
Runs a pretty good ship over there.
I always thought so. I liked it. I don't know if you knew this, but I actually met Steve Arnold before he ever came to Steve Young.
Why did you want it?
Yeah. Seems a little fair.
Steve was, and I
think I'll just use it
at my
until-
cousin's wedding.
You have them over
My
there.
cousin
So
at the
I
time
think
was a lobbyist for the fertilizer association.
At some point.
Well, now, I know the lobbyist now. You know her now?
She's not the lobbyist.
It didn't happen when you lost a vote or something. did it?
No,
her
but-
name was,
Bam.
I only
At the
need it
time
to
then, she was
last till the end of
Lisa
October,
or
so
you might have seen it's called Mirror.
unless I win, then I'll.
Jean Payne is, her husband was a former town girl.
Yeah,
Ray Payne?
Ray.
Ray's former now?
He retired,
I didn't know that. When?
I think last year.
That must have been because last year was the last time I talked.
But he was like, I'm gonna say more than 30 years.
Oh, absolutely. He's a legend in that. Is Brenda Matherly now taking his spot or is she still serving?
She's
With the
got-
King County Regional Office for Pat Nelson.
Brenda's great. Even when Brenda and I disagree, she is always cordial. She will always pick up the phone and call.
Nice to meet you.
I've had more conversations with Brenda Matherly off hours than I think anyone else.
She's not afraid to work, that's nice.
No, she is not. Brenda is an absolute pleasure to deal with regardless of whether.
We have Barbara
whether,
Hernandez, Monica Silva, and Susan Sterrett.
opposite side issue.
So
Very,
Hernandez, Silva, Sterrett, and yourself, and we have Caius. You have almost everybody except for Deb Allen.
Oh, well,
So you got a quorum for sure.
Oh, yeah, she's sharp.
I didn't know that, but I
Well,
would look forward to working.
She had an article in one of the farm magazines. She worked for us for a while.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, she was very, very good. Boyfriend, yeah, he was a fireman down at Wilmington.
No, it's on.
Yes.
You're on now.
Job at the
Read this.
Farm Bureau headquarters.
Oh, yeah. The white top, ivory white top.
I guess we're gonna get started. Is the treasurer coming? Do we know, or? No, you're here. Okay.
You're what?
So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Thursday, July 23rd, Public Service Committee meeting. Do we take roll at the outset or? Okay. So yes, we'll take the roll.
Allen? Hernandez?
Here.
Caius?
Vice President.
Copey? Silva?
Silva here.
Starrett,
Starrett, present.
Shefflo.
Shefflo present. The next item is approval of the minutes. We're going to defer that to the next meeting. Apparently not completed yet. Next item is finance. You have the reports. As we know, finance is not attending these meetings at this time. So if you have any questions or concerns, you have to contact them directly. We do not have a presentation today. Do we have the recorder of deeds on the phone?
I do not.
Do not? Okay. I know Sandy indicated to me that no one would be present, but maybe she meant virtually or in person. So we will skip over that for the time being and move on to the treasurer's report.
Morning, everybody. I'm Gary Hack. I'm the customer service manager. Treasurer's office. Treasurer Rickard's unable to be here this morning. Asked me to attend. I believe we have our report in front of you on the agenda. There's just a couple things he asked me to touch on this morning. Treasurer Rickard released a press release last week, a week ago today. It's on our website. I think it was published in Connects as well, in which he said that we were down 0.07% for our collection schedule. A week has passed, and as of today, that 0.07%, 0.04%. So there is really not a big difference in this year's collection rate as opposed to last year's, which is amazing. As for the first installment itself, that is down 0.52%. However, the second installment is up by 0.43%. To address the downturn in the first installment collection rate, what we do every year, we did it this year as well, we mail out reminder postcards to everyone in Kane County who owns property that has a first installment that is unpaid. Referred to it as a friendly reminder. It's just a simple postcard. We don't even put the person's name on the front of it. We just put property owner along with parcel number and a mailing address. And on the back, it just says the first installment of Kane County real estate tax was due on June 1st. As of July 17th, our records indicate the tax associated with the parcel number that appears on the address label of this postcard is not paid. Call us with any questions, and it directs them to our website so they can see. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try.
So I have a question. So this year, the first payment due date was deferred, or no penalty was incurred until July 1. So people got an extra month penalty free to pay the bill. How did that work out, or did you see much of a delay or?
We didn't at all. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but on June 1, we were pretty much collected. We were right on schedule.
Didn't cause confusion or things like that?
What caused the most confusion this year was the difference in power counties. Everyone had their own adjustments made. For instance, McHenry County granted a grace period of 90 days. Lake County split their installments into 4 installments.
Really?
How they did that, it's never recommended that.
Yeah.
There was also some confusion created with the IRS pushing their date to file to July 15th. Right before July 15th, we had a lot of payments coming. Property tax and the filing of their IRS.
maybe the lesson is to stay the course, you know, it's, we are creatures of habit, and so many are paid by computer by the mortgage companies anyway, that, and then most of the people that pay cash have the savings and are set up that way for that reason. And but that was a good gesture. Anybody else have any other questions for the treasurer,
Yeah.
Mr. Dias?
Just to be clear, it's 0.04%,
Correct.
so that's 0.0004. without
Four
the percent on it.
hundredths,
Yeah.
correct.
Mr. Chairman, just for a point of reference, if you could please speak into the microphones, the folks that are listening remotely are having trouble hearing. Make sure the light's on, mic's turned on, speak into the mic.
Is it on?
Should be,
Mine is, yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
I don't know if
just
Gary's
a
is
reminder.
on.
It is out.
We're good.
We can hear it here anyway, so maybe it was my twisting and turning around. Any other questions, comments? No? Mr. Supervisor.
Good morning, everyone. I will have to start with saying that I can't hear Mark Armstrong is something that I don't think I've ever heard say. I do have an update of my report. It starts on page 27 of your packet, and there's another closing to report. St. Charles has a final equalization factor. It's 1.0202. It's the same as the projected equalization factor. They are going to publish on the 30th of July. And so that's going to put the final filing date into early September, probably. It's got to be at that end, but if the final filing date falls on a weekend, it automatically gets kicked to the next Monday. So I don't have a final filing date on that. You know what? Maybe I do. Yes, August 31st will be the final filing date on St. Charles Township. The only remaining townships are Burlington and Aurora, and those we anticipate finishing up in the next couple of weeks. We are well ahead of where we were last year, and we're well on time to keeping the property tax cycle on pace to keep that revenue stream coming in on time. Now, this doesn't mean that everything is going completely smoothly, because we've prioritized getting these assessments done, handling this so we keep the property tax cycle preserved. We still do have a lot of processing of other things that have kind of taken a second backseat to all this while we're processing all these assessment rolls. So things like ownership changes and exemption processing are actually going a little slower than normal. Fortunately, the legislation that this county board proposed and was approved and signed by the governor is going to allow us to roll about 10,000 exemptions rather than having to receive an application, process it, and move it in. That's where a lot of the time is going to be made up with. That's time that will not happen next year. So if this were in a normal year, we would look great on one area, but we'd look terrible on another area. That other was where we'll make up the time. But we're on track to get everything done on time and within the current budget. On the COVID-19 front, we've, as I mentioned in the report, have adopted a new travel policy, which just basically covers what happens if travel happens to certain locations for employees. And that has been implemented successfully, and we still have not had anyone take sick with that, but we want to try to prevent that as much as possible. The other advantage of having all this early time built in is if we do end up with any significant outage because of an active case of COVID-19 in the office, we have enough buffer time that we will still be able to get the books to the clerk on time and to the treasurer on time, because our focus right now is getting the tax bills out on May 1st, 2021. we are definitely on track for that. Be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
So have anybody in your office had the virus or lost time due to illness from the virus? Or-
Not due to illness. We've had a couple of people exposed and they had to be tested until they could come back. That's essentially what the travel policy does. If you travel to an area that's a hot spot, you either need to quarantine for 14 days at home, or you need to have a negative COVID-19 test taken after you arrive back in your home.
Anyone else have any question for the assessor? Anybody online? I should have been asking that in the past, I guess.
This is Dr. Silva. Good morning. I just wanted to personally thank the assessor for the help that he's given District 7 and myself as their representative. He's been there and answered all the questions and kept everything as clear as possible. We have had some things that he makes sound very simple, but entails a lot of work on his behalf and the behalf of his staff. Mr. Assessor, I just want to thank you personally on behalf of the people of District 7.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the kind words.
Thank you. So unless there's something else that takes us to Regional Office of Education. Thank you for coming. Can we get your names?
Yep, I'm Katie Algrim. I'm the Director of Innovative Professional Learning at the regional office, and I brought with me Jenna Moeller. She's my new coordinator in the professional learning department. Pat Del Santo asked that I come here today and talk about a new initiative that we just launched yesterday in the professional learning department at the Kane ROE that we're really excited about. It's called Inspire, and it's a professional learning subscription box. So if you're familiar with subscription boxes like Stitch Fix and some of those that get delivered to your house, we've created a professional learning subscription box that gets delivered directly to teachers' homes. In the box, there's professional learning activities already prepared for them, grades pre-K through 12th grade, that they can immediately go and take those materials either in their classroom or online, depending on if it's a remote learning situation, and use that activity to work with their students on that. And then another component of the subscription box is that the teachers are then required to log into our online portal and do self-reflections on the activities that they implemented with their students. So it's not just here's a batch of activities, we hope that you enjoy it and use it with your students, but we're holding them accountable by doing the online component and checking in with them. The subscription boxes have different months. Every month focuses on a different teaching skill. So our first box will be delivered mid-September. And like I said, we launched it yesterday and we've already been getting steady enrollments for that, which we're really excited about. And our first box focuses on connections and building connections not only with your students, but also with the families and your colleagues. And so the box is full of activities and materials for teachers to immediately be able to go and implement. Of course, like every subscription box, we also include fun personal items for the teachers as well.
That your report?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there a name for that you
It's called Inspire.
Inspire?
And it
Okay.
was brought to the regional office by the Burlington Central School District 303 instructional coaches. I was collaborating with them last spring, and they mentioned that they were doing something similar. And I asked if it would be okay if we kind of modeled that to do a statewide initiative, and they were excited about that.
So by last spring, do you mean a year ago or you mean 3-4 months ago?
Just 3 or 4 months
Okay.
ago, yes.
So, I mean, this is COVID driven.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a way for us to provide meaningful professional development to the teachers, regardless if they're online or in person, without taking teachers out of the classroom even more.
What's the cost or the budget or who's paying and?
Yep, so the teachers or the school districts can decide to pay, just like we do any professional development, and it's $75 a month. And they can choose to do that monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually.
So it's coming out of your budget and then, or you're funding it statewide?
It's open statewide, yes. So far, we've gotten enrollments from one King County and a couple others that have not been within King County. And so the materials are provided by the regional office, so we're covering those costs. And then when they subscribe, the costs of their is cost covering, yeah.
Comes back to Kane.
Mhm.
Sounds interesting. Anybody else have any other questions or want to subscribe? Do you have to be a licensed teacher to?
You don't have to be. The fun trinkets would be fun for everybody, but the teaching materials might be a little harder.
I
But
was
some
thinking home-
families might enjoy them if they're doing remote learning at home
or
with their students.
homeschoolers,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
Chris,
So, and the teachers that are subscribing.
you're
this
not,
is-
your mic is either needs to be pulled
I'll
down.
lean in. So the teachers then receive the box, then is it training then for certification of some sort that applies to
Yeah, that's
their
a,
professional?
that's a really good question. So part of a teacher license is that you have to renew professional development hours every 5 years. And so each box, they get 8 professional development hours if they go online and do the reflections. If they don't go online and do the reflections, then they would not qualify because we have to hold them accountable for the activities and learning within the box.
And that's how you do it then.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any comment? I don't know if you get involved in, schools are opening.
Yes.
A month ago, we talked about, I think it was a month ago that they were talking about plans are underway.
Mhm.
Now I'm seeing, I think U46, I'm from Elgin. I think initially they said 2 or 3 days a week in school, and then they backtracked down to not
Mhm.
opening in the fall, I believe, or.
Yeah, our districts in Kane have worked really hard to work with their teachers association, parent feedback, student feedback, as well as obviously their administration and their board, and they're starting to release plans. And as they release plans, it's such a fluid situation with information that we're getting from the state and IDPH. So some of those plans have been modified and changed, but I know that they're working really hard to keep the communication lines open and are meeting at our office frequently to collaborate and share ideas.
Well, it'll be interesting, no doubt, how it all works out around the country. Deborah?
I was just wondering if it's even possible to talk about, I'm guessing that different districts are going to handle this different ways.
Mhm.
Some might be entirely remote, at least for a while.
Mhm.
I know of one that's doing, your youngster will go 3 days this week, 2 days next week.
Mhm.
Another batch of kids will do the opposite.
Mhm.
And I believe that's in school,
Mhm.
which implies that there would be remote learning on the days when you're not in school.
Mhm.
I don't know how you would keep all those balls in the air.
I know that there's been extensive communication and calendars that have been posted that shows, they're calling it like a hybrid schedule of AB days. And some of our high schools already had AB days, so they're calling them like gold and bronze days. So in addition to doing just a regular school calendar, they're doing their remote learning calendar as well that lays it out for which students are in school during different days. As well as our districts have tried really hard to keep that consistent based off of your last name, so that if you have a high school student, they're going to school the same days as possibly their younger elementary students to help with daycare.
Oh.
So I think that was a really good consideration that they took into factor.
Wow.
Mhm.
If any of so if you're off, that, I mean, presumably what that schedule Deborah just talked about would be, the class sizes would be cut in half,
Mhm.
I guess.
Yes.
Sort of. And would the kids that are at home be able to zoom into that classroom? Have you heard that going on?
Yep, so school districts are doing that a little differently. Some school districts are doing it that if it's your remote learning day, you're still expected to be on basically like a Zoom call, watching the classroom teacher who's there with the other students. Other districts, and it just depends on which district and what plan they have, are doing it where if it's a day where you're remote learning, then you've got activities that supplement what you had already been working on, and kind of that continuing of education, more project-based learning. think the good news is that it's a statewide, initiative that we're all kind of taking on, and there's so much great collaboration that's been happening.
Any other questions or comments from anyone online or otherwise? Deborah has a quizzical look on her face, but I guess that's part of, goes with the territory. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we now move on to the county clerk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you want to do the resolution first, or do you want to go over the report?
The report, I guess, based on the order, unless
Okay.
Are you want to do the resolution first and get it out of the way?
I mean, it's easy. It's a housekeeping resolution.
Okay, let's do that if there's no objection. We have a resolution authorizing the appointment of election judges.
Starrett moves.
Starrett moves. Deborah seconds. So this is, the names are not on here. It's just
Putting them on file. Same thing we do every 2 years.
any prior election judge is sort of reauthorized if
Yes.
they meet the qualifications. Anyone have any questions or comments? Other than, I guess I'll comment that we need election judges, as I'm told. So we all hear this, but get your friends and family. All in favor? No, this would be a roll call.
Allen,
Aye.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Starrett,
Starrett, yes.
Shefflo.
Yes. Motion carries. And then we'll go to the report.
So the monthly report you have in front of you, I did want to highlight 2 things that aren't in the report. We received 2 checks from the State Board of Elections for grants for about $58,000. So that'll help the bottom line a little bit. Some HAVA grants.
What type of grants are they?
HAVA, Help America Vote Act.
You know what that's geared toward? Is it the mail or?
No, that's a separate thing. These were things we applied for earlier in the year. For some of the cost of sanitation from the primary and then some election security things.
Have you bulked up on hand sanitizer and those types of things?
I have nightmares about hand sanitizer. We're working on it. We will.
You need another warehouse? Or
Huh?
You need a new warehouse?
Yes. Part of the presentation will talk about some of
Okay.
our needs, and so. I just wanted to highlight that. Yes, we know where we're at financially. Every department's in the same boat, but we're trying to bring back as much money as we can in addition to everything else will.
I looked again on page 32 of the packet at the monthly King County deaths, which are different from the health department's records. But June, again, just eyeballing it, last 10 years, deaths have been under 250 in each year, or under 252, I guess. And now that this month they were at 328. So, you know, it's definitely above average. Same with, you know, May and April. And I think, you know, thinking about it, that these would measure people who died in King County hospitals, or include King County hospitals, which does not relate back to their county of residence. So, so anyway, that's the end of that. And are you going to give us a presentation on
Yes, the
government? Okay.
It's updated a little bit from the last time we presented, I think, to exec, but just so the committee's aware of them, the requests we're making if you haven't heard them before. So this committee should know a little bit more about elections than the board as a whole, but I'm still want to remind you all of all the little things that go into running an election. As the slide says, COVID changes pretty much everything we do with regard to elections. If you look at a lot of the bullet points, next slide, please. You know, recruiting and training the judges, as Chairman Cheflo mentioned, we always need judges. Preparing our voting equipment, finding polling places, voter registration, voter education, especially with the expanded use of vote by mail to remind people of how that process works. Opening all our early voting sites. Just want to make clear, we're still running a normal election. If everyone decided to vote by mail, which won't happen, we're still going to have the early voting sites open, and we're still going to have all the polling places open on election day. It wasn't a waiver that we can't run an we're not running an election. We're running an election. We're just the state, the law that the state legislature passed and the governor signed mandates us to send out some information, which we'll talk about. Some of the board members may have questions about, to encourage people to consider voting by mail, but we're still running an election. We're basically running two elections at the same time. We have the vote by mail election and we have the regular election we're used to running, but we've done it before. Nothing's changed, just the percentages of who votes and how they vote may change. So if you hear people saying, I can't vote in my polling place, yes, you can. People have questions, call our office, go to the website, but all that information is there. So opening the vote by mail site or the early voting sites, accepting the vote by mail applications, mailing and processing those, opening and closing our regular sites, collecting the equipment, tabulating the results. So all these things go into the election. And then in terms of our costs, the additional costs for COVID, we're breaking them down to the polling place costs and then the non-polling place costs. So on the next, I can skip ahead about 2. We talk about frontline workers, essential workers, our judges, our election staff, they are the frontline workers. When you go to vote, they're the election judges, they're ones that are sitting across the table when you come to sign in and vote and help you vote. So we need to protect them just like we're protecting our first responders, our essential employees and things like that. The PPE and everything that we need are important. State law mandates that we have to have 1,500 election judges. We have to be prepared for that. We also have to take into account the early voting judges. We have 20 early voting sites that are open for 2 weeks, 15 days. So all those judges as well. There are counties that are introducing hazard pay. That's something to consider if we're going to be mandated to do that. We don't know at this point. So we need the PPE for our judges. We need the face shields, the masks, the gowns, the gloves, all of those things that are going to protect those essential workers. And then in addition, it's gone.
Want to keep going through them?
Oh, sure.
Read them all? No.
In addition, we need, the sanitizing wipes, because when the voters come in, they're going to use a pen. So we want to make sure that their hand, they can, for those of you that voted in person in the primary, we had those sanitizing stations out front. We'll have those again. So we're going to encourage voters to come in and sanitize on the way in and sanitize on the way out. And then in between, there'll be wipes to wipe down the equipment, to spray down the equipment, the tables, all of those things to protect the judges and to protect the voters. Gallons of sanitizer for, those machines, and then for the judges that they're sitting at their tables. Plexiglass separators at the judges' tables to separate the voters, have the little pass-through. So if they need to see ID or when you're signing the forms, they'll be there, but we want to make sure our judges are protected. Even though we'll be encouraging all of our judges will be wearing masks and face shields and the whole bit, and the voters, probably will be wearing masks as well, but we'll still have some separators there. We may need separators between the voting machines. The statute requires us to follow any mandates that the State Department of Public Health may institute that we don't know what they are yet. And that's one that they've talked about is if there's not adequate distance between e-slates, we may have to have separators there as well. Scanning thermometers for the judges and for the voters. The cost of cleaning the polling places. We're looking at some options that we could do on our own to clean the polling places rather than hiring a third-party vendor and paying a lot of money to clean them up afterwards. Also looking at one site that's separate for voters who come in and present with a high temperature, say that they're exposed to COVID or have been exposed to COVID, a site that would be separate from the regular, from that home polling place that they could go and not expose anyone. We're looking into that as well. Oh, there we go. So at this point, we've estimated that to be in the ballpark of $350,000 to $450,000. Getting that PPE, there's no central site to order it. We're working with Dr. Jeffers, but even our vendor doesn't have the supply that we want. So it's piecemeal. Get sanitizer here, get masks here, get gloves here, and do that. So, but we're getting closer. So, and like I mentioned, this is an estimate of what we can anticipate right now. We don't know what other rules are going to come out. We don't know what the situation is going to be like in October when we start early voting in November. We don't know. We have to plan for everything, and that's where we're at. Vote by mail. So everyone in this room is a registered voter and votes in elections. So you probably received a letter with a vote by mail application, ballot application, and then a letter explaining. So that was mandated by the statute. We mailed out about 211,000 ballot applications and letters. So we've received some calls asking about that. We've received a lot of people returning them and applying online. I think at this point we're over 30,000 people who've applied, and the mail tubs come in every day. But if you want to do anything, if your constituents want to apply for a ballot, the fastest way to do it is online. It's not that they can't, they got one in the mail, they can call our office, they can pick one up, but the fastest way is to do it online. You get an email saying that we received your application and it's done. You don't have to worry about mailing something back, anything getting lost in the mail, any problems. It's done right there. So that cost was about $111,000 to mail that out. In terms of our vote by mail costs, we've already received more applications than people who voted by mail in the last presidential election or the gubernatorial election in 2018. We'd said that you're looking at doubling or tripling that. It may end up being 3 to 4 times. We're preparing for between 75 to 100,000 vote by mail ballots. We have about 300,000 registered voters in the county. So it could be a significant portion voting by mail. So we have to prepare for that. We did save some costs, which we'll talk about in our mailing cost. We're looking at about $1.50 for the inbound and outbound mail. So estimating postage to about 150,000. In terms of putting together a vote by mail ballot, each ballot is created specifically for the individual voter. So your ballot that goes to your house is different than my ballot. Yours, only the people that are on your ballot in your districts. So they're produced one by one, specifically tailored to you. It's not like, okay, we're printing off 300,000 pieces of paper and you go pick who you want. No, they're tailored to you. So the time that goes into printing that ballot, folding that ballot, the instructions that go with it, the affidavits, the return envelopes, the outbound envelopes, labeling that envelope, all these things take time. The other side of it is when the ballots come back in. So you fill out your ballot, you mail it back to us. We have to scan the outside of the envelope with your signature. That signature has to be compared. The election judges have to review that signature and compare it to the signature that we have on file from when you registered to vote or when you updated your signature. The envelope has to be sliced open. The ballot has to be extracted. The ballot has to be scanned and then on election night tabulated. So all of these things take time in that process. We've estimated that between the processing the ballot, putting it all together, mailing it, and then the inbound process of opening it, reviewing the signatures, scanning it, tabulating it, it's about 3 to 4 an hour. So you're looking at 15 to 20 minutes a piece. So our choices were we can do what we've done in the past and hire a lot of extra staff and spend a couple $100,000 that way, or automate the process. Automating the process, a couple of machines that go into that. We have purchased a folding machine. The folding machine, because our ballots are big, we have the 11 by 17 because the ballots have to be in English and Spanish. So you're taking a big piece of paper, you're folding it twice to fit it into an envelope. We used to use the big flat size envelopes, which were $1.50, $2 a piece to mail. Now we folded them down with that machine. So they're gonna get to go in a regular letter size envelope, and that's gonna save about half the postage costs. Thanks to that folding machine. The inserter, which is the machine that assembles all of the different pieces, the ballot, the affidavits, the envelopes, everything. So instead of doing your assembly line process, a machine is there to help that process. So instead of 3 or 4 an hour, this can do hundreds in a minute. The mail sort, the nice thing about that as well is the barcoding that goes onto that makes sure that your ballot is your ballot, and it helps us track it. So with this process, your ballot goes out, it gets scanned in saying that, my ballot's being mailed to my house, so that it's like Amazon tracking. From that time, okay, it left, it was scanned in to go out, then it goes to the post office, and with the intelligent barcoding, the post office knows that the ballot got there, and then it gets to someone's house, and then the voter fills out the ballot, and then it goes back to the post office. We know it gets to the post office, and then it comes back to our office and it's scanned in. So the voters are gonna know throughout the process, here's where your ballot is. It's left each stage of the process and we know where it is. So it will help, increase the confidence of the voters to know where their ballots are in the process, and helps us keep track of everything, in addition to automating the process. So we've talked about outbound, and then on the inbound side, when that ballot comes in, the outside envelope, the signature is scanned. The technology allows for automatic scanning recognition of the signature to see if it matches. The state hasn't certified that technology yet, so it's still the same process. Election judges review it, but in the future, this could cut down on some of that time. A lot of the signatures may match. So your judges are looking and it's an automatic match, it's fine. It could save a lot of time if the software looked and said, yeah, that's Mr. Kai's signature, great, move along. If it's not, then it goes to the judges to review. We're not at that point yet, but the technology is there to do it. Again, we talked about the scanning. We talked about processing hundreds a minute rather than a couple an hour. Ballot drop boxes, similar to what the treasurer's box is over here. Secured, looking at having one here, and then possibly having them in other parts of the county. Physically secured to the ground, camera. The statute allows for those ballot drop boxes. There's additional cost for early voting. We have a lot of early voting sites, but they are mandating some additional hours on weekends that are above and beyond what we had. So there's going to be additional cost for that. And then a couple non-election costs, the same PPE that we need for our judges, we need for our staff in the office. And then the plexiglass dividers in the work areas. Most departments have gone through that already. We have some estimates out, so I don't have a number on that. And then our lost time. We've lost a significant amount of, employees that were out, and then devoting our time. I can say how much time I've put into this, and just as a lot of us have, that time also has been an expense. So there's your process. We made this request, and that's where we're at.
Did you total those? You need a total slide. Do you know what the total of those estimated?
We're still waiting on what the separator cost and the PPE stuff is, but probably somewhere between 1.7 and 2 million.
Yeah, I think it'd be good just to total the guesstimate if nothing else. I think in part, the people on this committee and the people in the room, need to advocate, I guess, for, there's going to be a budget fight over who gets the 50 million, and the clerk is definitely hit. It's not, it's not like life-saving type work, but it's certainly a budget hit that qualifies for reimbursement. So anything we can do or Mr. Kenyon can do to get this through the CAC committee, I think is a good idea. Oh, sure. I have a few here, and if it's all right, Jared, and then we'll go to Jared. The polling places are all closed this year. And this applies to schools too. So school is out. I assume ROE is going to be closed for the day, the office and, well, not the clerk's office, but the government is all going to be closed. So that helps a little bit with polling places and the interaction. Like, it solves the school, non-school problem, I think. So
A little bit.
yeah, I don't know if you have any comment on that, but and then I was going to say on the ROE side, having the day off school, having the day off on election day, you've already, maybe the teachers have voted by mail, they can earn $100. It's a very
200.
long day. 200 now? There's two types of fees. What, is everybody 200?
If you're trained.
200 if you're trained,
Yes.
100 if you're, don't take the
It's a little
training?
less.
Yeah,
not-
okay. So it's not all bad. So that is that. The hazard pay and the additional pay, is that just a matter of a budgetary issue? Or in other words, could Jack decide, well, we're going to pay 300 this year? Or,
That'd be a question for him.
okay. And I think I got this question answered. There won't be poll watchers. Will the public or the parties be able to watch the incoming mail ballots be processed?
Yes.
Because you aren't going to automate the signature,
No, judges will review the signatures.
so they could stand there and
Yes.
watch that process. And it's all barcoded. That was the other question I had.
And remember, it's your envelope that's barcoded. It's not, we're not
Okay.
tracking the ballot.
So the actual ballot's not barcoded,
Well, the ballot's barcoded going out, so you know that the right ballot's going in the right envelope.
but the ballot itself doesn't have a barcode on it. That would take away the privacy, I
Yeah.
think, yeah. Just this, the plexiglass is expensive, the separators are expensive. In the voting arena, I would think you could use simple cardboard to separate. I mean, we already use cardboard to separate the stations with that little box for privacy. I don't know, that's just my thought. That there, just be a bigger cardboard booth that the person could go into and not, because right now you could probably sneeze above some of
Well,
those.
you kind of lean in when you
Yeah.
vote. There's that covering around your
Yeah.
head, so.
So maybe that just needs to be larger. You know, Sarah or Jared had a comment. Are you there, Jared?
Yes, Doug, thank you.
Go ahead.
Brian, my question has to do with voter fraud. It's something that I keep hearing come up when it's regarding vote by mail. So could you describe the process when the signature doesn't match? What happens? How do we make sure that, you know, it's not somebody trying to vote for someone else? And what do you see are the potential flaws in the system we currently have as far as vote fraud security?
I would suggest if you have those questions, come over to the office and talk to Jack or Raymond that run the elections. I'd rather not speak about, I'm not trying to avoid your question, but I think you'll get a more detailed answer from the experts rather than me postulating on something that is not the best answer.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments for Brian?
Uh,
Deborah?
Yeah, and a relatively easy one. Let's say I go through the whole protocol for, and I receive my ballot by mail. How does the office handle it if I decide, you know what, I would feel more comfortable early voting? So I show up at an early voting site and I assume that there's some kind of record that I've asked to vote for by mail. And is there a way then to disengage the one and allow the vote, the early voting instead?
Yes. It would be easier if the voter brought that vote by mail ballot in to cancel it, but there's an affidavit that you can sign to say that you received it, but you intend to vote in person.
And that would happen like at the early voting location?
Yes.
Okay.
And with the poll books, we can tell when people vote.
There
For
you
the
go.
same reason that if you came to vote at your polling place on election day and then tried to vote somewhere else.
Thank you.
Does that make it a provisional ballot if it's just the affidavit? I mean, do they then?
That'd be a Raymond question.
Yeah, it seems to me I recall something to that effect that, you know, they make sure, that, I don't know, make sure the mail one doesn't also come in and that, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I appreciate that presentation. I think it's good, again, good for all of us to have that information. My constructive criticism would be to start with the slide that says $3 million and then kind of fill in the, you know, guesstimate and contingency and then fill in the details because you're really asking the board or the committee of the board to allocate. And I think it's, you know, it's becoming it's already, well, I don't know, it's hard to differentiate between what's COVID related and what's changes in the system, I guess. But now I think it's fair to say it's having 3 voting systems, mail, early, and day of is, you know, it's to some extent COVID related, you know, it's like running 3 systems. Personally, I think 2 full weeks, weekends, Sundays, you know, it's enough, but that's me. Anyone else have any other editorials or comments or questions? Hearing none, anybody online there? Don't be shy. Other business, we have none today, no executive session. I need a motion to place the reports on file. Mr. Caius moves, Deborah Allen seconds. I suppose we'll roll call.
Allen,
Aye.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Silva,
Copy, yes.
Starrett,
Starrett, yes.
Shefflo.
Yes. And Mr. Copey joined us at somewhere along the line, so.
Copey,
Copy, yes.
Okay, motion carries. No public comments. Motion to adjourn. Do a roll call or Deborah moves, Mr. Caius seconds.
Allen,
Aye.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Copey,
Copy, yes.
Silva,
Thank you.
Starrett,
Starrett, yes.
Shefflo.
Yes. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Roger.
Could have saved the stamp. Little did you know, huh?
I have carried this around for
I dropped it off a month or so ago.
and I thought, well, you know, I'll stick it in.
We just discussed it Wednesday too, just exactly where we were on it. And the entries and donations like that have sort of declined as time's gone on. So this is good. Thank you. All goes to coats. We donate straight across. We buy coats and give it to the kids in the Boys and Girls Club in Dundee Township. So. Oh, well, thank you. It is. It's a, you should feel good about donating. You do. It's a good cause. Oh, you almost got that. We on mic? Oh, almost got it up to an hour. He talks really slow. I'll get it up to an hour.
For those of you on the phone, the remote information remains the same for the ag meeting.
What does that mean in non-technical terms?
I don't know how the Fabian thing is going to roll out.
Uh-huh.
If you figure that we do some kind of,
Thank you.
make some kind of decision, and I don't, this, I think that's Drew and Martin and Deb are supposed to be pushing.
They're going to keep pushing. They're really adamant about it.
They are. And I think Bill Leonard now has added his voice saying he wants to know what the choices are.
Right.
And you want to see the choices, and you also want
And
to
then
see
move it.
the full board. make a
Right.
decision.
Good discussion of the full board, yeah.
Well, the thing is that if some kind of resolution comes out of the August meeting, that then goes to September, let's see, August finance. So why don't you anybody see that?
Watch out, Caius. You're being lured in. I'm just telling you, I know this lady.
I'm just trying to find
No,
truth.
She's working me. She's working me. Help me. Mike. Help, Mike. Thanks for the warning.
And so the
Hey, yeah, sure.
you.
Haven't had a paper out in a long time.
Look at that. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. There is no.
How are you?
It's good.
I don't know. Tell me who these people are. Those two gentlemen. Those two gentlemen there. Who are they?
One of the red shirt is Mark Van Kerkhoff. He's the head of the department upstairs. I hear Steve on Farm Bureau.
And here are some choices. Because it's going to be.
Honey. Hi.
Thank you. This is the. Yeah, great art.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sounds great. Rob did the design, so tap into Rob's. Yeah.
Hi, Marcus. How are you? Good. Your family out west doing?
Good. They were just home last.
If you could find a spot for it, man, it was.
Are we ready to start, Ben?
Probably wise. Help my son and custom move to an apartment to a house. There wasn't a lot of stuff. And then we got some stuff from.
You know, the nice thing is you got the backup.
I was hurting for weeks.
Right. It's like, you know what? After they're 30.
It's really nice.
I don't think any of them are.
Yeah.
Which facility did you work
Still in Colorado or were they?
Yeah. They're.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
The monster, right?
Monstrosity.
Yeah,
I see somebody there once and it's like, Jesus, city.
it is. Yep.
You could ask an employee and they may not know where to go. But it's very nice, very well-run place.
Yeah. Pretty
Yes, it is.
nice too. Maybe Delmar, pretty nice too.
Oh, Delmar's very nice.
Yeah, there's enough people out there that knock it out and schedule it so all week. Did I win the pickup? Steve? Did I win the pickup?
No, you did not.
Hey, oh, wait till he tells you who won.
Is the name Kenyon?
Yeah, what's his name? Carolyn Gerke.
Really?
Yeah, Wayne, yeah. And her brother said, how many tickets did you buy? He bought 10 and she only bought 5,
Oh, yeah?
but she won.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Needs a new truck. Oh.
Usually only need one. Look at that. Oh, I like this. I like your picture. I don't like the way you guys are acting. You're not giving me faith. Are we ready to go? I'll call the meeting to order and we'll have a roll call.
Kenyon,
Here.
Caius,
Caius present.
Copy,
Copies here.
Molina, Sanchez,
Here.
Starrett,
Starrett, present.
Wegman,
Wegman present.
We have a quorum. Ms. Wegman, I want you to know it's very cold in here this morning, so you made the right decision.
Good call.
We see nobody here for public comment. We're going to talk to our partner, Mr. Steve Arnold. Tell us what's going on.
Good morning. I did leave for each member of the committee a copy of our July publication, our King County Farmer, and also a 2020 water quality report, a statewide report on farmers' progress towards the nutrient loss reduction strategy goals. That report just came out a couple of weeks ago, and I encourage you to take a look at it, some of the different practices that are being quite honestly experimented with around the state in order to reduce nitrogen and phosphorus loads in runoff coming from farm fields. This is the project that helped the County Farm Bureau and the Forest Preserve District put a bioreactor, a wood chip bioreactor, on Forest Preserve District property in the fall of 2018. And it's in keeping with the next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is I gave everyone a map of the pollinator rain garden that was installed with the help of volunteers at our office right along Randall Road in St. Charles on Saturday, July the 18th. I want to thank Mr. Caius for showing up to help.
My pleasure.
He spent a lot of time on his hands and knees with a shovel in his hands, planting prairie drop seed and little blue stem, and a list of all of the plants that were planted are on that diagram. There were about 350 plants put in the ground that morning by about 24 volunteers in about 2.5 hours on a very, very hot Saturday morning. So we appreciate everybody that came out and helped us do that. We appreciate the assistance from the Environmental and Water Resources Division of the County of Kane that designed the rain garden. All of the labor put in, Jody Walnick and Rob Linke were both there all morning for the planting, and Jessica Mino assisted in securing the plants and delivering them to our location. And we look forward to watching that grow over the years. A lot of people understand why we would plant a pollinator garden as an agricultural association. But to us, the deeper meaning, I think, is the fact that this is a dual purpose property improvement. It's a pollinator garden, but it's also a rain garden. And one of the primary reasons we decided to install it is in recognition of the changes in the stormwater ordinance 2 years ago now, I believe, or last year. I can't remember when that ordinance passed. But the wisdom that the County of Kane showed in making best management practices acceptable in lieu of stormwater detention on farms that are having improvements installed. And we think that was just a really common sense decision to allow farmers to install practices that improve water quality rather than focusing simply on stormwater detention when you're making improvements on large parcels of land. And so this is kind of a demonstration project
in recognition of that also. Although we did not do an improvement that required a best management practice, it's there partly to demonstrate to farmers that this is an approved practice, that when you're doing construction or improvements on your property, this is something that you may want to consider. And there are a number of other best management practices in lieu of stormwater detention that you can take a look at to improve water quality. So again, our sincere appreciation to the Environmental Water Resources Department for helping make that come to fruition, and especially to Rob Linke, who, in addition to working Saturday morning, spent a couple afternoons out in the hot sun helping us prepare that site. We picked about the worst time possible to install this, and it was originally intended to go in April. But like many things, COVID canceled that. It would have been much nicer to plant it in April with hundreds of people on our lawn every day at Touch a Tractor than on a hot July Saturday afternoon. I also put one other sheet in front of you, actually a release from Jody Walnick about agrochemical container recycling. And there is a local site for that for July 31st, where they will accept agricultural chemical containers from farmers for recycling. There are permanent sites, 2 permanent sites in the state for year-round collection where farmers can deliver those, but both of those are a considerable distance from us, Carrollton and Lawrenceville. So whenever we get these opportunities closer to home, we want to do everything possible to make sure that that farmers are aware of them. You're probably also aware as county board members that that department is also doing a used tire collection sometime in the fall, and Jennifer Jarland is now collecting information from townships about the quantity of used tires that they may have picked up along the roadside in the last year. And I believe that is in cooperation with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. The last thing I'll report on is that we did do a scholarship award ceremony at our office on the Sunday past, the 19th of July. In an age of COVID, we did it outdoors on the parking lot where we could socially distance, and presented. We had 9 of 15 scholarship recipients present for that ceremony, and so we've presented scholarship certificates to them, which we thought was important, given the fact that some of these were high school seniors that didn't have a graduation ceremony. And there's really not been a whole lot of opportunity to recognize people for academic achievement in 2020. And we concluded that with a raffle drawing, a vintage truck raffle, which really provides the bulk of the money that we provide in those college scholarships. And as Mr. Kenyon said, Carolyn Gerke of Elgin, who happens to be the chair of our young farmers group, was the grand prize winner in that raffle. So congratulations, Carolyn.
Are there any questions of Stephen? One other thing you forgot to mention. You did something with the food bank, didn't you?
I believe there's a report in this farmer. We did make an $8,700 grant to the Northern Illinois Food Bank in, it was probably late June. That was money that came to us from the AGCO Agriculture Foundation, which is headquartered somewhere in England. And they made 4 grants to not-for-profits in North America, and we were very fortunate that they chose our tiny little foundation as one of the recipients of that grant. But they wanted those grants to go towards COVID-related hunger relief, and we could think of no better way to use that money then to contribute to the food bank's Milk to My Plate program, which provides milk to local food pantries. So we did that in June, and we are in the midst of a campaign now to get our members to match that contribution so we can double the impact of that contribution from the Agriculture Foundation.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I think our almost member, Debbie, she's not really a committee member, but she's here so often and loyal. You are like a committee member.
Moral support or something. Steve, can I ask, we would be foolish if we didn't replicate this everywhere we could think of. And I've had a couple of people, including Mr. Feinstock, say, for heaven's sakes, let's get a couple of these out at our new multi-purpose facility over on Route 38. Can I ask what the cost of this was? Was there a cost to rent rototillers to plow up the land appropriately in addition to the plantings? And I'm going to guess we would be hoping for a volunteer sort of arrangement also, but for maybe a guesstimate on plantings and rototiller work?
Yes, I have not put all the costs together, but we had a site that lent itself very well to this. We already had a depressional area that flowed directly into a municipal storm sewer. So what we're really trying to do is catch some of that runoff before it runs directly into the storm sewer system. But we didn't have to do a lot of dirt work. We didn't have to haul in a lot of topsoil. We brought in some sand and some compost. I think we had maybe $1,400 in dirt work. And that's for an 800 square foot rain garden. I do not know the cost of the plants because actually the Environmental and Water Resources Division paid for the plants. But I assume by the time all of the costs are taken into account, $3,000 to $4,000 maximum, and probably closer to the $3,000. So not an expensive undertaking given the site that we had to work with. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see that I don't see the Northern Illinois person here. Is she online? Teresa's not. All right. So we'll go down to presentations. Growing in Cane by Matt Tansley.
Do we have a remote for the slides? Oh, okay, sure. Well, good morning, everyone. So today I do have a couple of updates on some Growing for Cane programs. And so I'm going to start out just by discussing some of the updates for the JJC Farm to School program. So you can move to the next. So there have been a few changes since the spring. Obviously, with COVID and the pandemic, there have been some changes that have had to have been made. And fortunately, one of the opportunities that USDA, the granting agency, allowed is for the Farm to School grant recipients to request extensions on their grant programs to give them more time to adapt, to make changes, and to continue their programs. Obviously, a number of schools had to shut down during the pandemic beginning March and April. And while the JJC school does continue year-round and has continued during the pandemic, there were some challenges. Specifically, we lost one of our primary resource partners in the U of I Master Gardeners. So in the absence of that volunteer resource, that forced planting to be delayed, and some of the gardening activities had to be pushed later into the summer. And so we did take advantage of that opportunity to request an extension through USDA. And so that was approved by USDA for a year. And so we'll actually be able to continue the program through June of 2021. And so it's also going to give us time, in addition to being able to continue to spend the grant funds through the summer, it's also going to give us time to refine some of the written deliverables. And also, we did submit a revised proposal and budget. And I discussed this in one of my earlier presentations, but we essentially were able to repurpose some of the funding that had been set aside for staff. But since we didn't need it for that purpose, we could spend it on some material investments, including some orchard trees outside of the garden area, a hand washing station, some additional curriculum materials. So we're still waiting on USDA to approve this revised budget, but we're hopeful that they're going to see, the benefit, the long-term benefit of these material investments in the Farm to School program. So you can move ahead to the next. But today I primarily just wanted to share some of the highlights and improvements that have been taking place in the garden. And I really have to credit the JJC staff and the science teacher, Miss Sloan, for really taking a lead role in planting the garden and caring for the garden this spring and summer. And you can see that they've really had a lot of success. They've done a lot of work with art projects. You can move to the next. And they've they've painted a number of these round paving stones and kind of placed them throughout the garden to make the garden area more decorative and inviting space. Because one of the ideas for some of these artistic improvements was just to make the garden a more inviting space for the students to spend time, to relax, as well as to continue their gardening activities and to continue to learn about horticulture. You can move on to the next. So you can just get a sense of these stones kind of positioned throughout the garden. So you can move on to the next slide. In terms of the harvest, there's really been a variety of produce that's been grown, including jalapenos, bell peppers, tomatoes, cucumber, zucchini, and this has continued throughout this time, has been used by the culinary staff to prepare meals for the cafeteria and the food service. And you can move on to the next slide. And just go on to the next. I thought this was a really kind of creative art project. So this is the walkway that goes from the main Juvenile Justice Center facility out to the basketball court. On the left-hand side, you do have the garden, and then on the right is where hopefully the future apple orchard trees are going to be planted. But I just thought it was a really kind of a cool and creative way to kind of activate this space and really make it kind of exciting and colorful leading out to the garden. And one of the additional requests that we made in the revised budget was for some additional art supplies so that the students can continue to decorate the space and kind of customize it and demonstrate their artistic abilities. And you can really see that in the next couple of slides. You see the students painting a mural on, this is a wall by the garden area. And yeah, the second slide, you can see the finished product in that, and just really how talented the students and staff are in painting this, really a professional looking mural in the garden area. So we're really excited to see this space continue to come alive and to see the students and staff customize it for their needs. And some of the other, you can move on, some of the other ways they've been able to use the produce is pickling. So they've been able to pickle some of the cucumbers. And so these can be used into the fall and even into the winter if the culinary staff wants to kind of stretch those products out. So it's more of a value added use of those food items to kind of give them some more life. And in the next photo, you can see some of the pickled cucumbers getting ready for another recipe and to be served in the cafeteria. So a lot of exciting things happening at the JJC and the garden, and it's good to see those food items being put into good meals. So I have a couple of other updates on the kitchen equipment grant program. So this is a program that I initially introduced back in December. And the idea is that we would work with the Farm to School Network to make grants to schools and other childcare institutions to help them update their kitchen facilities to serve more fresh foods, fresh produce. And so since that time, we have awarded 6 grants, 5 of them to Kane County schools and childcare institutions. And you can see those include the U46 School District, the Juvenile Justice Center in St. Charles, Central High School in Hampshire, the Mooseheart School, and Fox Valley Christian Action, which is primarily a summer camp program for students. And so those students or those schools receive grants ranging between $1,500 and $1,800. And those are going to go toward anything from salad bars to food gardens to refrigerators and freezer equipment. So really, really meeting a variety of needs that these programs have identified. And so the Farm to School Network is going to take the lead in essentially processing the grants and getting those grant funds out to those institutions. And if we go on to the next slide, so one of the requirements for receiving the grants is that each of the recipient schools had to complete an audit, basically a kitchen audit to review their current capabilities, their equipment, and kind of, do some reflection to figure out what the grant could do to fill some specific needs. So it was originally intended that Diane, the Farm to School manager, was going to go out and do these audits in person, but because of the pandemic, she was actually able to develop a form in a spreadsheet that the schools were able to use to do their own self-audit, so they could kind of guide themselves. So their kitchen managers could go through the audit process and just kind of do a self-assessment and figure out, what their needs are and kind of what the opportunities were for kitchen equipment. And lastly, really the only requirement that we're going to have of these recipients is that within a year of receiving their equipment is that they submit basically a narrative description explaining how those equipment pieces were used, and just to provide some photographic documentation of those being put to use. So we're excited to see this program moving ahead and appreciate the gratitude that was expressed by those recipient schools. So if anybody has any questions on any of these programs, I'd be happy to answer those.
I knew we could count on you, Deborah.
Who installed the cool sidewalk?
I'm sorry?
Who installed the cool sidewalk?
Oh, well, it was there. It was just painted. So it would have been the students and the staff at the JJC. So I know that a couple of the staff have some, some pretty good artistic experience, but the students as well, as you can see, were very artistically capable. So together they were able to do that. Yep.
It seems like there's a lot of synergy there, and it all works together and makes it look good and taste good, and I would think people would want to be part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you could do that with our sidewalks and paint the yellow brick road when they're coming to the treasurer's office.
Here we go.
Better do it at night. Is there any other questions? I think this is great programs you're doing. It's continuing education for those young people and for us too. And I know they're excited about when I go to the Judicial Public Safety meeting. Okay. This is probably might be the most exciting part, right?
I think it's all exciting, right?
Grant announcement?
Yeah. Well, and if you think back on how we started with the JJC projects, and we were in those grow bags on the basketball court. I don't know, for those of you that weren't with the Ag Committee, the very first grant, we had a very little bit amount of money, and there were no raised beds because we didn't have that yet. And so we were just in grow bags on the basketball court. So where we are today is just phenomenal. And I think too, all those photographs and things that are going to be documented in that report that Matt and the consultant are working on for the deliverable is going to be a great guidebook for everyone across the country that are in these types of facilities, which is also going to be awesome. And then we are continuing to look for more money so that this can continue also, because it does take a lot of resources. And every grant builds, and so yes, I have very good news. You can go to the next slide. We applied for a grant from Compeer Financial for $10,000, and this was due right at the start of the COVID outbreak. And we asked they were particularly seeking funds for farmers that were that were having issues with COVID in particular, and addressing that. And so we if you remember, Matt sent out a survey to our farmers through our newsletter, and we were able to ask some questions about what are some of the struggles that you're having. And we were able to take some of those responses and include that in our grant and our grant request. And one of the things that I highlighted in the request was the adaptation that some of our local food farmers were scrambling because that was just kind of at the season where they had been planning to open markets, and yet they were thinking, what are we going to do with our local foods? How are we going to address our customers? Because at that time we were still at stay-at-home orders, I believe. And so they were thinking about how to manage their customer base. A lot of them were having to turn to e-payments and things like that. So financial struggles are still there for some of our farmers. So we proposed mini grants and be able to help offset that cost. So we'll be making an announcement sometime soon for all cane farmers that grow in Kane County, any type of local food, proteins, vegetables, fruits, anything that is grown in Kane County, dairy. But we are kind of having to just work through some of those requirements. We want to make it simple, and yet at the same time make sure that we're addressing the requirements of the grant. So we've also been collecting a database to make sure we're not leaving anyone out, because we always have new farmers that are just starting as well, that started this year, so we don't want to exclude anyone. But we think those we'll be able to make those announcements pretty soon, and we'll make sure we'll work with Steve as well. I'm suspecting maybe $200 to $300 a farm. It's not a lot, but just enough to kind of offset for those that apply. And then the next grant that we also got, in March, in the depths of the early stages of the pandemic. We also applied for a ComEd Green Region grant, and their theme this year also was were pollinators as well. And our proposal was farming with pollinators. And we received $5,000 grant, and we proposed a $5,000 match as well. I believe that we can get the $5,000 in kind from some of our partners and supporters and not have to put out a cash outlay. But you do have a resolution before you today as the next item, accepting those funds. And if we absolutely have to put the cash out, we do have those funds from a grant, previous grant as well. What we will be doing here is not as much as what the Farm Bureau has done on their property in terms of an actual installation. It would be to create a farm pollinator plan, and it would show how it would be out at the St. Charles Hort Center. And we selected that site for a couple reasons. First of all, it's a university-owned property, so it's inherent that it is for research and demonstration. Right now, it is leased by the St. Charles Park District, so they're our partner in this. And there are several different functions out there. You have conventional farming for corn and soybean rotation. You also have inactive right now, but there are some plots there for vegetables, vegetable gardening that were once teaching gardens that we hope to have one day reactivated. And you have master gardeners out there, and there's space also for beehives. And I think the Park District would like to activate that. We've had lots of other ideas about teaching, like a pollinator path, maybe, lots of other ideas. But the idea is that we could bring lots of people to the table to talk about how to create a plan for out there for teaching. And this would probably be farmer focused. It will be farmer focused, and also focus on nutrient loss reduction and water quality as well, but also including different cropping, conservation cropping as well, and how to include farm pollinators, all in this planning process. So, and again, the deliverable, it would be similar, that we will have an actual plan that would be able to be shared within our Kane County community, and certainly into our programs like farmland protection, but also shared within the region. So we're very grateful for the funding from ComEd. Oh yeah, I think we have some slides from St. Charles Hort, which actually the properties run on both sides of 38 there. And you can see, it's kind of faint here, but you can see some of the property over there on the left at Peck and 38. And, you know, we'd love to, I think, include, there's potential to include some research here also from the university. I've talked to them a little bit about activating some of their researchers back on the site, which they've talked about for some time. So there's lots of opportunities, filter strip, there's all kinds of things that we could have out here, but we need to have a good plan before we can have that. You can move on to the next slide. I think I have a slide from the nutrient loss reduction plan for the state, and want to show how some of these different techniques could help work toward reaching the plan that we have. And I think we have one more slide after this. And then the other thing that I think one of the reasons that we got this grant is that we have, when you look at this number, it really is kind of shrinking in terms of the overall farmed area within the metropolitan region, but we do have an area of influence. And because of all of the great programming that we do, farmland protection, our Growing for Kane program, all of these very unique programs that only happen in Kane County, we do have kind of the eye of the region on us, whether it's the Farm Bureau, the JJC, we now have the RCPP program, lots of different things happening. So we do have lots of partners as well. So the opportunity to get that St. Charles Hort Center activated and have a real good plan out there, and one day maybe get it activated would be a long-term goal. So this is the first step, and thanks to ComEd and Open Lands for getting us started. And we'll be bringing you this project over the year. Both of them will be kind of like a project we'll be working on over the year. So I would be asking for your next step, the resolution accepting the funds for the ComEd Green Region, and then I'll be bringing you more information on the mini grants next month on how we like to roll that out.
Do we have any questions? Congratulations on your hard work paying off.
Thank you.
Oh, Mark Van Kerkhoff.
Yeah, I've thanked IT every month at Development Committee, because when the stay-at-home order came down in March, we were almost immediately, thanks to IT, be able to have everybody work from home remotely and have access to their desktops. And it really, that's kept our building permits going, and we've been very busy there, but it's also enabled our planning team to work seamlessly from home safely and apply for these grants and continue to do things like the survey to our farmers and everything. And we couldn't have done it without that kind of support from IT. And I think now what we're seeing is the fruit of that, not only in grants that are starting to come in because of our team's work, but with the JJC, more significantly, it'd be easy to take the COVID as a hurdle and say, we're just going to put everything on hold. But our partners, their passion and dedication to continue that work really shows. And I want to thank Matt for his continued detailed work with that. But, without our ability to continue to administrate and lead those, everything would have stopped. So we're very thankful to IT, and I'm thankful to our team for their dedication and working from home.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Mr. Caius.
Do we need to move this so that we can?
You would like to move the resolution?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss it too, but.
You want to move it? Would anybody online like to second?
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez seconds. Is there discussion? Yes, sir.
Yes, just a quick question. The matching funds, hopefully we don't end up needing them, but they will be taken from the $5,000 from the Growing for Cane funds.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming we thought that through really well, and there's not a problem losing that in that particular area.
Those are grant funds, Growing for Cane are grant funds through the FLOW, Food Land Opportunity Farmer Training category. I would certainly rather raise funds, hopefully corporate donation, in-kind donation toward working toward that plan would be the preferred way to get in-kind support.
It's not like when you volunteer for something or you say, I'll do it if nobody else does it, then, and then you end up doing it. So hopefully we will get something. We won't lose that 5,000.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Roll call, please.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Copey,
Opie, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Starrett,
Starrett, yes.
Wegman,
Wegman, yes.
Surges,
Try Molina again.
Molina,
He usually is pretty faithful. So. The motion's passed, the resolution's passed, and we'll move on. Is there anything else to come before the board? I forgot to do minutes. Secretary called that attention. So we need approval of minutes from June 18th.
Do
Mr. Caius?
we have the minutes from June?
Yes, we do.
I thought we didn't get any minutes this week.
That may be other committees, but she's got these. Is there a motion to approve them? What?
If they exist.
What?
If they exist, I move.
If they exist, he moves. Is there a second from the people online?
I'll second. Copy seconds.
Opie seconds. Is there any discussion? All in favor? We'll have a roll call vote.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Guys, yes.
Kopi,
Opie, yes.
Melina, Sanchez, Starrett,
Yes.
Starrett, yes.
Wegman,
Wakeman, yes.
Stand approved. Now we need a motion to place the reports on file.
Wakeman
Starrett.
moves.
Oh, wait a second. Wegman moves.
And Starrett seconds.
Barrett seconds.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I'm just checking, and I think agriculture was one of the committees that we didn't have minutes for. I'm looking at Gabriella's email.
Yeah. I don't think we had them.
They were sent. They were sent out. That was one of the two that we had done.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just
We
seeing
can
legislative,
defer.
public service, and agriculture.
There's no trust in this world.
Yeah. Verify. Trust but verify.
Verify.
Is it too late to?
So we need a motion to place reports on file.
Wakeman moved.
Wegman moves.
And Starrett seconded.
Barrett seconds. Roll call.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Guys, yes.
Kopi,
Opie, yes.
Melina, Sanchez,
Yes.
Starrett,
Starrett, yes.
Wegman,
Wakeman, yes.
It stands approved. We need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman,
Wakeman moved.
Wegman moves.
Starrett seconds.
Favor say aye. We're done.
Aye.
Aye.
We didn't get a prize brought in today, so. Oh, you do?
A t-shirt,
A T-shirt. You have one of them?
every day is Earth Day on the phone.
We have a blue T-shirt. You have one?
No, but you can ask for a phrase that pays.
Okay. Yeah, okay, what event was celebrated last weekend at the Kane County Farm Bureau? Well, what two events? We'll make it tough.
Touch a tractor.
What? That's,
Kopi said touch a tractor.
no, Kopi, they didn't have that.
Well, we planted a pollinator garden.
There you go. What else?
I already got a shirt though. Was there two? And the scholarships, said pickup for the
There
scholarships.
you are, scholarships.
I donate my T-shirt to, who's here? Jared Sanchez.
All right, he needs a cool farm shirt.
What size do you need, Jared?
I'm an adult large. I could always use another t-shirt.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.
Just ran out of battery.
I don't need this, but I will send you one. But I'll just send you the PDF. Oh, yeah, that's all. Okay, all right, thank you.
So Cisco got the